All right, guys, we're back with another episode. We're in Miami Beach right now for Art Basel, and I couldn't help but think, art, cameras, lenses. What are some of the best lenses you guys can pick up in 2023? Because I know some of you don't have the slightest idea. I don't want you guys to get overwhelmed with stuff like this, especially if you're just starting out, because I was once a little lad myself. And you seasoned professionals, don't go anywhere, because there's some stuff in here for you guys too. I have bought pretty much every set of lenses you could possibly think of when it comes to Sony Alpha cameras. And you can use the same focal lengths for your Nikon or your Canons. At this point, like I said, it doesn't make sense to carry around massive lenses, which is why we're gonna start off from the smallest lens to the largest with the widest focal length. And that is the 11mm 1.8 APS-C lens from Sony. This thing is absolutely amazing. Now I've got the active stabilization turned on and it's super smooth. We're on the beach here. Now disclaimer, I had the 14mm 1.8 G Master lens from Sony, which was $1,600. Absolutely insane. I got rid of that lens for a few different reasons. First off, massive and bulky. This lens on this camera, I'm using the Sony a7C II for reference with the ECM B1M. It doesn't even feel like there's a lens on here. That's how light this is. Why would I go around and carry a 14mm lens that's stupid heavy and stupid expensive? So I got rid of it. For the same price, I picked up the 11mm 1.8 APS-C lens, and I also picked up the 15mm 1.4 APS-C G lens. And I could honestly throw in this microphone in here as well, the ECM B1M, and be at almost the same price as the 14mm lens. Why would I go ahead and do that? I mean, think about that. Why would I carry around that massive lens when I can pick up two lenses and a microphone for the same amount of money? And honestly, there really isn't any difference when it comes to quality. But no, you're a seasoned professional, so you're thinking to yourself, but when I use my Sony camera in APS-C mode, the crop lowers the megapixel count, which is true to an extent. You only get about 2/3 the original megapixels. But no one with half a brain is willingly going out in public with an 11mm lens and expecting to zoom in 200% for street photography in their photos just to snap a photo of someone eating a taco. Also, you know what? The same applies to cropping when it comes to video, but you don't notice it as much because you're not going in and zooming in on a video you already shot in a cropped mode. And in some instances, with higher end cameras like my Sony A1, you actually get a higher video resolution in APS-C crop mode. So there's that. That's if you're shooting in 4K. It's like almost, I think, a 6K image downsampled from 8K. Not to mention that there's also a ton of variables here that affect performance. I mean, you have ISO, dynamic range, sensor size. The list pretty much goes on forever. So you know what? Pardon me, I'll sacrifice a small amount of image quality in some scenarios to carry around a much smaller lens and pretty much enjoy the experience that much more when it comes to a lightweight setup. But the real reason I also got rid of the 14mm f1.8 was when I was shooting video or vlogging, which is what you do with a 14mm lens, I could hear the motor vibrating inside the lens when using my Sony ECM B1M, which is my favorite mic for Sony cameras since it requires no wires. The motor travels a long distance to focus, which in turn is heard by any microphone being used with the hot shoe on the lens. Because when you are shooting on a 14mm lens and you're further away or closer, you can hear the vibration and it has to travel a little bit more, which I feel like happens with any microphone that you use in the hot shoe. Oh my God, it is super windy. Now, it wasn't the main reason why I got rid of the lens, but think about this for a second. If I can pick up an 11mm and 15mm and a microphone for almost the same price as the 14mm 1.8 G Master lens, it's a no-brainer for me, and it should be for pretty much every filmmaker out there. So I know you guys are probably asking yourself, hey doofus, why'd you pick up a 15mm APS-C lens if you have an 11mm? That's a good question. This one is for the gamers and for the streamers out there. My streaming setup consists of my FX30 and the 15mm 1.4 APS-C lens because both my a7C II and my A1 overheat after about an hour or two of streaming up in the new game room. But I've left my FX30 on for over 20 hours before with no signs of overheating thanks to the built-in fan on that camera and the FX3. Man, I can't film with this. These helicopters everywhere. What's going on here? Hot girls running around everywhere, helicopters. We got a ton of wind, we got helicopters, we got airplanes, we got speedboats, we got dogs, we've got snakes, we've got lizards, we've got cats, we've got people running around screaming, we've got girlfriends arguing with their dads. I don't know how I'm gonna film this, but I'm gonna try to make sense of something here because this is very important. Shut up, Jesus Christ. Bear with me with this video, guys, I'm sorry. The 11mm was way too wide for my setup, and I needed something that's just a bit more narrow, allowing in a little bit more light at f1.4, but also creating a shallower depth of field when streaming, especially in those darker settings in the game room. So that's why I had to go ahead and pick up the 15mm 1.4 APS-C lens. I know this situation might not apply to you guys, but it does for you, which is why I added this lens into the lineup as well. So next up, we have the 20mm f1.8 non-APS-C Sony G lens. I've had this thing for years, and I featured it in a ton of videos here on the channel. But I'm ashamed to say I haven't had the need to use it in a very, very long time. Mostly because of the smaller APS-C lenses that I have picked up recently. But this video is about you guys. It's not about me. So if you are someone who's not interested in those APS-C lenses, I figured this one would probably be the best one for you guys if you need something wide enough for vlogging and also need something that's much cheaper than the 14mm f1.8 G Master lens. So I would definitely go for this guy, no questions asked. And then comes the highlight of the show, the 24mm f1.4 G Master. If you are looking for a one and done lens to do it all, this is pretty much gonna be the one. All right guys, so behind me is the Home Alone house. As you guys can see, there's a ton of people here. We're on the A7C2 and the 24mm f1.4 G Master lens. I mean, it's tight. We're in active stabilization. Yep, we're in active stabilization. I didn't expect there to be this many people here, but then again, I don't know. ECM B1M, it's not too windy out here, but we're at the base ISO of 800, and then I think 2500 is the dual ISO on this. I haven't seen this many people here ever. I've been here maybe 7, 8, 10 times. I don't think I've been here like around this time where the Christmas lights are up. So it's a vibe for sure. Remember guys, we're the Sticky Bandits. That's S-Y. All right, guys, Basil Schmazel Art Basil's over, and I decided to come to New York. I always make an effort to come here around Christmas time to see the tree, see some friends, and also snap some bangers. So this is kind of a fast forward, but we've got the 24mm f1.4 G Master lens, which won't focus because the lens I'm using right now with this A7C2 is just insane how crystal clear this image is and how good it actually focuses. But let's go to take some bangers. And yeah, I brought the 24mm with me. I'm vlogging on the 1.8 11mm, which we discussed earlier, and I also have the 85mm with me in my bag. Oh, by the way, guys, another thing that's like super important is gloves. I got these on Amazon. They have an actual pad here to where you can go ahead and use your camera and your phone. It's got a heat signature that it recognizes, but it's got, I don't know if you guys can see, look at how much of a grip this has on these gloves. So you can go ahead and use your phone and your camera, because the A7C2 has an actual touch sensor and it's actually very responsive. But we're shooting in the 11mm right now with the active stabilization turned on. ISO is at, I believe, 800, which is the base ISO on this, and 2500 is the dual ISO, the second ISO. Obviously, go ahead and crank it too, so make sure you don't have too much noise. But it does help that you have a ton of lighting around you, especially around Christmas time. After here, I think we're gonna go ahead and check out Rockefeller Center. So let's take some photos and I'll catch you guys there. If I started all the way over again and I needed to have just one lens for vlogging and one lens to do everything else, shoot my A-roll, street photography, all that stuff, I would start with the 24mm f1.4 G Master from Sony, and I would pick up the 11mm 1.8 APS-C lens. I think that's pretty much all you would need to start off, and I would use it in combination with something like the Sony A7C II, which is what we're filming on right now. For those of you guys that don't know, the Sony A7 II just released with the Sony A7CR. That one's got a higher megapixel count, but I feel like this one, when it comes to video and photos, is the best compact camera you can get out in today's market. It's pretty much a Sony A7 IV, which I've also owned, in a much smaller form factor, and it's cheaper. As for the 24mm f1.4 G Master, the lens is insanely sharp. Crystal clear shallow depth of field for that beautiful bokeh. I mean, this is really all you need. If I can bring only one lens with me to shoot videos and photos on a trip, this is the one I would definitely take in my camera bag. No questions asked. Now next up, a ton of creators would say that the 35mm or the 50mm lenses and their focal lengths are the best when it comes to street photography. But again, if I'm shooting with my 24mm lens and I use it in the APS-C crop mode, then guess what? I have pretty much a 35mm equivalent anyway because of the zoom. So for that reason, I went ahead and got rid of my 35mm f1.4 G Master. I had no use for it anymore. I didn't use it. It was just sitting there collecting dust. So I got rid of that lens. And then why would I go ahead and pick up a 50mm lens when I can go ahead and pretty much grab an 85mm for all of my needs? So hear me out for a second. What can you do with a 50mm lens that you can't do with an 85? Sure, it's a bit more narrow, but if you're out here shooting street photography, honestly, I can't think of in the past maybe 5 years where I've had to have a 50mm lens over an 85. It just, for me, the 85 was perfect. That's pretty much in every case scenario for me, but for you guys, it might be a little bit different. So I'm just giving you guys my scenario here. If you're doing wedding photography, stuff like that, maybe you need something a bit more, I don't know. In those scenarios, you might require a 50mm lens. But for me, I jumped straight from the 24 to the 85. And if I need a bit more than 24mm, I can always use it in the APS-C crop mode with my Sony A1. I'll never forget, the main reason that I got rid of my 50mm lens that I had was Peter McKinnon made a video years ago where he called the 85mm the king of B-roll. You were the reason I bought this lens. And funny enough, it was the second lens that I ever bought. Me and this guy go way back. I bought him for around $450 brand new, and honestly, I'll never forget that day. As the years went by though, he kind of just sat in a corner gathering dust until my true passion for photography kicked into high gear. And it started with shooting F1 cars about 2 years ago. You know, the idea of carrying around a massive 70 to 200 lens while being able to enjoy myself at an F1 event, or any event in general, was hilarious to think about. But you know what? I thought to myself, wait a minute, I have a 50 megapixel monster Sony A1. Why not just throw my 85mm into crop mode and have something equivalent to about, I don't know, I'd say almost 130mm, which is more than enough for where I usually sit at when it comes to these F1 events. And so I did. And look at this monster I snagged at Vegas F1 a few weeks ago. The 70 to 200 second gen would definitely be my next favorite lens to use, but in all honesty, I'd never use it. But I know some of you guys will, especially when it comes to wildlife and sports photography. So that's the one I would grab if I needed a little bit more than 130mm in focal length when I use my 85mm lens in the APS-C crop mode. I definitely want to apologize about the wind today, guys, the helicopters, the airplanes, the speedboats coming by, but it's Art Basel week and I felt like I have to make this video for you guys because it's super important for you creators out there to kind of streamline the process. And if you're someone who's just starting out, I really hope that this video was useful for you guys. If there's any lenses that I forgot to mention that you feel like I should definitely be using, make sure you guys leave it down below, where you'll also find links to everything that we covered in today's episode. If you want to see more, make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DetroitFury. And if you enjoyed this content, please make sure you smash that like button for me, subscribe, turn on your post notifications. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in my next episode. Peace.